This video is brought to you by Incogni. How to Train Your Dragon is the latest animated film to get the live-action remake treatment. How to Train Your Dragon, you know, the now classic, damn near universally beloved animated film from DreamWorks, based on the very successful book series. It's about a young lad named Hiccup, who is the son of a very successful Viking, who pursues the dream of hunting dragons, only to one day meet a young dragon who happens to be very rare, powerful, and more than anything, a good hang. I've never done a proper DreamWorks rank, haven't even given it much thought, to be honest with you, but that first How to Train Your Dragon film is undeniably one of the best of that era. The characters are charming and funny, the world building is rich and expansive, as proven by all the sequels, the cast is loaded, the dragons are cute, and the story is just so damn touching. It leaning into more mature content, being rather violent for a family film with all the fighting and killing, but it also being pretty cute, made it universally appealing. At least for DreamWorks, it was a clear step above the rest. It was, to many, the serious one. And I dish out all this backstory, all this praise, to say that there was a reason I was just a little too curious about the live-action remake for this one. You see, the difference between something like this compared to something like Lilo and Stitch, a remake I chose to actively ignore and avoid last month, is that this is adapting a story that feels like, on paper, it could actually function really well as a live-action film. Lilo and Stitch, completely unnecessary. That has animated written all over it. No reason to make him real. This has, or had, the potential to check off a lot of unchecked boxes in today's blockbuster landscape. Feels like a Pirates of the Caribbean, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter blend in a way. When you think about it, there isn't really a franchise that's alive right now that's succeeding in that realm of live-action fantasy for everyone. Nothing for kids that could also be taken seriously. They're not fucking with Dune. All they really got is the dumbest thing you've seen in like 12 years. So in a weird way, as anti-art as I consider live-action remakes to be, I wasn't actively against this for a while. I was even cautiously optimistic, and more than anything, very curious. The same way data brokers are a little too curious about your personal information, which reminds me, I want to thank this week's sponsor, Incogni. You see, it is true. Data brokers scan the web for information like names, addresses, social media accounts, even court records and social security numbers as a way of building profiles for individuals. They can then use that information for their own good, and by that I mean for ads. But the worst part is that that personal data can end up in the hands of the wrong people. I'm talking scammers and fraudsters. The process of preventing this from happening and cleaning up what's already out there is a total headache, but Incogni is here to help. See, Incogni reaches out to data brokers on your behalf, requests that they remove your personal data, and handles any of their objections. All of this being automated. It's actually wild. When I signed up, I was frankly amazed and also a little startled by how much of my data was out there. Really scary stuff, and it was beyond satisfying to see it clear itself up through Incogni. Scammers can use AI to mimic the voices of friends and family to trick victims into sending them money. This actually happened to a family member of mine. It wasn't with my voice, but it was with one of my cousins, and it was really disturbing. I think about it often. These imposter scams rely entirely on voice data they find online, and something even more baffling is health insurance companies could actually raise your rates based on your online activity. These companies actually work with data brokers to collect data that could be used as determinants of health. Take back your personal data with Incogni. Click the link in the description, that's incogni.com/Karsten, and use code Karsten to get 60% off an annual plan today. Deep down, I was looking forward to this movie, and I felt like a bit of a fool after the fact. This is, at the end of the day, exactly what you think it's going to be. It's live action How to Train Your Dragon. It's a faithful remake of the animated film, does not try to do anything too crazy, manages to be silly and as cartoonish as it can be, but still brings it home with the drama where it needs to. All the boxes are checked, and in the end you get a perfectly serviceable movie. So why does it feel so bad? Why did I feel so robbed? Before I try to unpack that, let me get into what's good. The performances. Mason Thames is a great Hiccup. He both looks and sounds the part, very well casted, but he's also just got that bouncy, playful charm that keeps him interesting for the 2-hour runtime of this thing. Nico Parker was good. I like how much more they try to do with Astrid here, though her big introduction at the top of this film compared to the flames in the background in the original, hilariously underwhelming. It was just a bunch of gray smoke instead. 2025 Hollywood, folks. But anyway, I was also weirdly impressed by Gabriel Howell as Snotlot. Some of these other younger actors, it's a hard watch, and I'm not going to go into detail because what use is that? But he was so expressive and committed in a way that was really fun to watch. Other actors, it was like TikTok acting. I have no other way of describing it. You can tell they're online, and it really just snaps me out of something like this. That said, some of the veterans here, like Nick Frost and Gerard Butler, are pretty great. They get into it and look unrecognizable for the most part. They were a fun time. I also thought the VFX were good and fine, if a bit safe. I mean, the character designs for some of those more extreme dragons were great, don't get me wrong, and you really get to look at them here. They don't try to muddy up or hide any designs like a lot of these bigger films try to. I like that Toothless looks like his design in the original animated film and not like some Lion King bullshit where they try to make him a realistic dragon. But yeah, I mean, pretty serviceable VFX at the end of the day. A bit underwhelming for what I wanted out of something of this size, I have to admit, but it got the job done. This isn't really a complaint about the CGI, rather it's more so about the very existence of the CGI. One of my main complaints about this is how intangible a lot of it looks and feels. When I think of the appeal of these huge blockbuster fantasy films, part of what's so great is the level of resources the filmmakers have to work with in production design. You don't get to see that in any other place. It's one of the great things about blockbuster filmmaking at this scale. I think back to like Pirates of the Caribbean and how wet and smelly everything on screen clearly was. How palpable each frame of Lord of the Rings is. These are pretty high bars to match, I have to be honest, but I kind of expected to be wowed with something like this, with something of this size, with this source material. And that's where I start to get a little annoyed. This does, in fact, get the job done. They succeeded. It's not offensively bad, it's not overly weird, it's faithful to the very successful original, and all that said, it should and will unquestionably make $1 billion. Hollywood needed a summer blockbuster. But you know what it also needs? Something we can believe in these days. Something to care about. I didn't need this to be amazing, but I needed something more than what we have here. Something I could be wowed at. Something that would make me ooh and ah at what a big budget can do when put to good use. I wanted that so bad. I can't believe I was looking forward to this. Instead, I got what feels like something that looks just about 10% better than the live-action Avatar remake from last year. I could not stop thinking about that show while watching this. They're like the same thing in my head. I never finished it, so take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. But that was one of those new Hollywood remakes that's so desperate to impress, so desperate to look better than what you're used to for a live-action remake, but ultimately falls short because at the end of the day, it's a live-action remake, and you can only go so far within those walls. And the thing about live-action remakes, and this is our own fault to an extent for how scary online fan bases have become, is that if you get it wrong, it's not just underwhelming, it's an abomination, an embarrassment. There have been enough attempts in the past that end up becoming laughingstocks that studios feel like the only way to navigate these inevitable calls to adapt a beloved animated project is to play it as safe as humanly possible. How to Train Your Dragon feels emblematic of this new type of live-action remake, the safe kind. Serviceable, impressive, faithful, and has broad appeal. With a few camera tricks and 2-minute scenes that make you feel, for a second, like, oh, maybe they cooked here. But did they? Did they cook? Or did they just lock in for like 2 minutes? Did they just make a fun match cut? Is that all that we need now? Don't get me wrong, it doesn't need to try and be better than the original. I'm not asking for that much, but I do wish these movies would at least pretend to justify their existence every now and then. Just pretend like there's a reason we're making these. All of that said, I don't know how I feel about this movie at the end of the day. I'll admit that. I haven't seen a live-action remake of anything in a while for that reason. They always leave me kind of baffled at how exactly I'm supposed to feel. What exactly did I just watch? It wasn't bad. Of course it wasn't bad. It was fine. It was fucking How to Train Your Dragon. But it left a bad taste in my mouth. It was a waste of time. Something to zone out to for 2 hours. I guess that'll do for our first summer blockbuster. Movies. Anyway, that's what I gotta say. Thanks for watching. Hey, let's end on a high note. Go see Materialist this weekend instead. Go watch that movie, inform your own opinion, and I'll see you in the next one.